As I covered in my Shinedown episode of Backtracking, modern rock can be a fickle mistress indeed, but Shinedown managed to grasp instant success and have kept that since they started and have a nice consistency now. Today's band were less fortunate, it took one big change for it all to happen. Nothing More started in San Antonio, Texas in 2003, and despite having many lineup changes, the main two remaining members are guitarist Mark Vallelunga and drummer turned lead vocalist Johnny Hawkins. Add in fellow current musicians and bassist Daniel Oliver and drummer Ben Anderson, and it looks like Nothing More are showing no signs of stopping, which is why it's my job to go over things in the past, present, and look forward to the band's future. It's Backtracking, and this time it's Nothing More. Let's face the music. We start with the band's debut album, Shelter. Still sort of keeping that theme of Season 3 of not self-titled debuts. Anyway, this album was self-released in 2004, but although the band themselves put it out, they hired producer Ralph Jezzard behind the booth, which is not a member of the band, so that interests me. What interests me more is the style of this album. Now's as good a time as any to point out that my first album by Nothing More was the most recent in the stories we tell ourselves, so I'm used to Johnny Hawkins as lead vocalist. But for this album, it was the band's first vocalist in Josh Klaus. Other members at this time were fellow guitarist Josh Coachville and bassist Matt Reynolds, not to mention those who I mentioned in the intro. But yeah, this album is kind of a weird one. It almost has some math rock elements to it at points with odd structures, and the band had been known to mess around with math/prog rock styles, whilst still mashing that with the modern day hard rock and alternative metal. I think that a part of why this album is such an odd duck to me is because of how I listen to it. This wasn't really an easy album to find, but there was a good enough stream of it on YouTube. However, there were a couple of moments where two songs were mushed together. It made things feel a bit weird. The first instance was Intro and Where I'm Going, which makes sense as that's your common YouTube file when it comes to music. It makes less sense later on for the songs Banjo Flyer / Experience and Dull / This Is It. It kind of ruined the flow of the album for me. Just personal. But that aside, I wasn't completely alienated and I still liked the album. It's over that people have criticised an old vocalist even when a new one is better, and I will say this, Johnny is better than Josh, but Josh gave it his fucking all here. He delivers a good range and a really good harsh scream from time to time, and, just really good lyrics as well, covering topics like politics, love and faith. Coachville and Mark both do good work on the exits with good triggering riffs and some really mean solos, and they just have a great attack in tandem together. Matt's bass work is good and deep and low as a good prog rock bass should be, with amazing riffs and a really good performance of his own. And Johnny is a great drummer actually, with awesome fills, flair and great timing. Standout songs include Experience, Sad Eyes, This Is It, the great closing song in Watch and Learn, and my favourite in Noise Without Sound. Shelter may be a bit confusing at first, and it's not easy to find, but it is worth your time. With small production, a raw feeling and tone, and good stories and performances, I can recommend this one. Good. Next is the band's second album, Save You / Save Me. Released in 2007, this label change as the band would shift to Vestia Entertainment and drummer Johnny Hawkins would be producing. So the dude was the band's drummer by this point, is now better known as their lead singer, and he produces 3 of the band's 5 albums, and he looks like a modern day sex god of rock. I'm fully convinced that he's not human. Anyway, speaking of not lead singers, the lead singer for this one was Trey Graham, and his only album with the band, which, much like Josh Klaus's only album with the band, was their debut in Shelter. Having said that, there was actually another singer between album releases named Travis Cox, who performed in an EP called Vandora, so that's nice. But yeah, so once again, my thing about our lead singer still being good still stands, and in between Josh and Trey, I kind of prefer Trey more, just personal preference. Other new members of the band's current bassist Daniel Oliver, and this would be the last album to feature Josh Coachville as one of the guitarists. Even with all of these changes, the band managed to put out a cohesive and well-produced piece of work, not to mention it has a great element of fun. Once again, with the version that I found on YouTube, some of the songs are to be mashed together, but unlike with Shelter, when 2 full songs were mashed up to make a 10-minute long mess that was tough to keep up with, and not all of it was there, this time we had instrumental tracks and political speeches taking place beforehand. Those ones are Under the Eyes of Celine / 60-Second Affair, which is all piled into one word, Narcisso's Slain / Somewhat Proud, Cry to Us, Asclepius, I don't know, / Bring Back the Day, and Helios Amaranto / Welcome Home, the last song of which is the final track. Now, I don't know all of the political speakers because there's a different one for each song, but I can definitely tell that it's Gandhi who does the speaking on the Helios Amarantos. And also, I choose to believe that Welcome Home is the last song of the album because the actual last song is called Untitled, but it's otherwise known as Black Track 2, and it is a weird-ass song with unusual structures, fusing so many different genres, featuring a rapper I couldn't find the name of, and the weirdest thing is that it's not even a bad song. It's pretty awesome, and it's just a good dose of dumb fun, which is another part of the album structure. It's put together so well, and it goes into territories that their debut teased going to. The lyrics are more political focused, with subjects like green and lust for paper prevailing, but there's some romantic stuff too, and it's all told really, really well. Trey conveys good emotion and delivers well, even carrying some powerful range and good showmanship. Josh Mock's guitar work assault is awesome with good interludes, verse, and some damn fine solos indeed. Daniel's bass work has a good first editing with savage lines and scales of his own, and Johnny's drumming is awesome too, keeping it well with everyone else and just sounding really, really, really good. Standout songs include Sunset, Bring Back the Day, Somewhat Proud, the acoustic version of Shadows from Shelter, so yeah, and my favourite in The Me. That's what the song's called. Save You/Save Me is a good example of everything cranked up for a sequel album, with rare production, pacing, maturity, and growth while still being really, really fun. I can recommend this one too. Next, we have the band's third album, The Few Not Fleeting. Released in 2009, it would be the band's last album through Vestia Entertainment and was once again produced by Johnny Hawkins, and it's also their shortest album at 42 minutes and 19 seconds. It's also, weirdly, the band's only album as a trio, as Mark and Daniel were still rocking the guitar and bass respectively, but Johnny had taken over as lead singer by this point while still being the drummer. Also, Josh Coachville provided extra guitar parts for two of the songs, those being The Cleansing and Blue and Gold, so that's cool. But yeah, the band weren't given a huge frame of time given that this is their shortest period between releases and they didn't have a lot to work with and it was the last album on the label, and they made it such a damn good one. Also, Johnny Hawkins was dealing with depression, losing his mother to cancer, and having just ended a 5-year-long relationship. Poor dude. Still, that leads to this album being a new start for the band. They were riddled with lineup changes, record label changes, and personal problems, and they turned all of that pain, that anguish, and that fury, and they all channeled it beautifully into this album. It's easily the band's best example of their current sound. I completely lost where I was. There we go. Combining all of the edge and theatricality that they needed, and Johnny Hawkins himself had little singing experience and had a fear of public speaking. He's now one of the most charismatic motherfuckers I've ever seen on the mic, so yeah, safe to say this album really turned things around for him. The structuring of this album is so staggeringly good. It's built fantastically with lots of awesome prog rock and modern rock moments from song to song, and a lovely consistent tone and flow, with the production really tying it all together. Lyrically, it covers the personal issues of Johnny's life as well as things such as love, sadness, depression, and losing people close to you. Johnny turns in an absolutely great performance with delivery, range, and dynamic screaming and control flying out of each orifice that you can name, with his drumming being precise, hard-hitting, and timed so damn well too. Mock's guitar work kicks ass with awesome riffs, solid assault solos, and a good work rate, and Daniel puts in a good go on the 4-string, driving well with really, really good balance. Standard songs include Fat Kid, Fell in Love with a Ghost, the title track, Love, and it is spelled with a question mark, and my favourite in The Cleansing. Despite the bad circumstances surrounding the album, the band poured their hearts and souls into every facet of this, with amazing performances, lyrics, production, and a more solid sound structure that would become their blueprint, basically. I can totally recommend this one. It's amazing. So, listen to it when you can. Next up is Nothing More's fourth album, Nothing More. This was originally released in 2013 through the band's own label of Arms Division Records, but it was then re-released a year later under the 11/7 label, and it also has Johnny Hawkins as all of the rest of Nothing More producing it. It's also the band's longest album at just over an hour and 2 minutes. It also contains my first Nothing More song, and this is the time in brackets blast. The band will also become a quartet with this one, with Johnny moving to vocals permanently and Paul O'Brien taking his place beyond the kits. And this album is freaking awesome. You'd think that with this album's hour-long length that it would drag on, but it doesn't. It keeps a solid consistency and pace, and I really like it. It's also the band's most popular and successful album. I mean, it contains my first song, sure, but it's also the album that brought the band out into a more mainstream audience, whereas The Few Not Fleeting was the bubbling under the surface. I don't know why that signifies bubbling under the surface, but there you go. It's also maybe the band's most accessible piece, and I say that as someone who, up until this point, had only heard the most recent album, which is the album after this one. But yeah, it's also got a more diverse and serious array to it, with the addition of more electronic elements and some industrial stuff, while still keeping the band's main sound, even as it veers more away from prog rock. But the great structuring is still there, with good build-ups and the usage of new elements handled well, along with many of an Alan Watts speech-style things to be all tied together. Lyrically, it goes over things like politics, religion, and the media, and one of the songs is titled Jenny, and it's about Johnny's sister Jenna, who suffers from bipolar disorder. And oddly, it's kind of nice to have an element like that of everything still not being okay, and it's what made The Few Not Fleeting so good, and whilst that element of darkness is used more sparingly here, it's still handled well and has a great sense of tone and consistency. Speaking of which, Johnny sounds way more relaxed than I was just a vocalist, still belting out intense vocals and awesome range. Mark's guitar work is awesome, playing some really heavy riffs and nice little solos here and there. Daniel's bass work is a standout, playing well with everything else sounding nice and clean. And Paul makes a welcome addition as the new drummer, hitting hard, sounding good, and working well with everyone else. Standard songs include Christ Copyright, First Punch, Jenny, I'll Be Okay, and my favourite, and Friendly Fire. Nothing more self-titled fourth go at it. It combines surprises, flair, production, performances, and consistency, all for another absolute belter of an album. And I can recommend this one. So there you go. And finally, we have the band's fifth and most recent album, The Stories We Tell Ourselves. Released in 2017, this came out through the 11/7 and both the 11/7 and Better Noise record labels, and was produced by the band themselves alongside Will Hoffman. As I mentioned earlier, this was my first Nothing More album, and I actually think it's a really good starting point. It's a good mixture of the band's sound that they cemented in their previous two albums and combines the surprises and such of their first two albums. At the same time, it does signify a more permanent move away from the prog rock sound, sounding more hard rock / alternative metal and such. So, there you go. It's also the first album in the band's history to keep the same lineup across two albums, and I'd say it's the first to not feature Johnny Hawkins as producer, but he's the singer for Nothing More, and they're credited as producers of the album, so that doesn't really count, and as a result I will just shut up and move on. This album, like their eponymous fourth, has a consistent pace to it, but it's a lot more balanced than their last outing. Having said that, I do have an odd complaint. This album is listed as over 52 minutes long, and 6 of those 18 songs, which is the most on any of their albums, are little interconnecting things, which I vaguely remember listening to when I first heard this album last year. When I tried it again for this year and this season of backtracking, it turns out that those 6 little instrumental songs are banned in my country. Thanks YouTube and 11/7 Records, you racist bastards! Still, as I mentioned, those were small little songs that, whilst helping things out along last time, it's just as easy to listen to the album without them as it is to listen with them. It speaks to the structuring of the album when it can have something like that could be present or absent and still help the album sound either way. And it builds 2 huge choruses and maintains a balance but no less precise and quick attack of pace. Slowing down when it needs to, and there you go. Lyrically, it covers the same topics like religion, love, family, and politics, with this album definitely leaning more in the political route, with songs about rising up and media manipulation in particular. Johnny's theatrical vocals continue to have their flair and range, adding more screaming and noise enhancements thanks to the really nifty production. Mark's guitar work is awesome as usual, with fast riffs, slick solos, and great timing. Daniel's bass work is, once again, pretty good, plugging with a deep groove and really good heavy drive for scales, adding some real flavour to things. And Paul's drumming is fast, precise, timed well, and a great bit of showmanship here and there too. Good for him. Standout songs include Don't Stop, Just Say When, Go to War, Do You Really Want It, and my favourite, In Tunnels. The Stories We Tell Ourselves is another solid album and a great showcasing of how modern rock can evolve and progress with the right people behind it. Produced well, performed damn near perfectly, and written with care. I can recommend this one. It's just a really smart album. So, let's round them up. Most favourite was definitely The Few Not Fleeting. Despite the limited resources that the band had at the time, they improvised and used what they had in the best possible way, giving an emotional album that really turned things around for them. It's a good example of the band's every band has a third album myth, in that it's their third one that makes their career and what it will become. So The Few Not Fleeting is a fantastic example of that. Least favourite was maybe Shelter. I don't really have anything against it, but the band has come so far and a lot better. And I think it was a bit tough to follow, but that's really the only bad thing about it. I think I just found a bad stream somewhere, so that wasn't really the album's fault, though. And, you know, because of how limited the album is in terms of release, it's not easy to find. Sometimes things just don't work out, but I can still recommend it's a good album. Anyway, that'll about do it for this one. Join me next time where I'll be in Las Vegas, Nevada, not really, and I'll be covering Escape the Fate. And as always, thank you. Thank you for listening. You're awesome. Bye-bye. I fucked up my outro. I'm sorry. See ya.